Hey everybody, I'm Amy,
I'm Paul.
and welcome to the Comics Hall for the week of June 10th. Woohoo!
All right. Yeah, I'm ready.
We've got Jasmine moderating us in the chat, so if you guys have any questions on our social channels, we are on Facebook, YouTube. I believe we're streaming all over the place.
MySpace.
um, the Morse code. If you have any questions or want to chime in the chat, hit up Jasmine. She'll be letting us know if you guys have any discussion points. But we've got a
Yes,
great show this week, kind of
we
planned
do.
around one of the biggest pieces of comic book news this week, because it is comic book awards season. Paul, you want to kind of take us off here?
Yeah, we have gotten, I mean, I don't want to say we structured this entire show around it, but we definitely structured this entire show around it. It is not only Comic Books Award season, but nominations are currently opened for the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity in Comics, and also Comicon International has announced its full list of Eisner nominees for 2020 for the ceremony celebrating achievement in the year of 2019. No. We don't have any news about when the winners will be announced since there's no physical ceremony this year because of the cancellation of Comic-Con. We won't be able to see things right then and there, but we'll get an announcement of the winners. And but right up top, and this is a great show. So our entire structure today is we're taking some of the more recognizable maybe categories, and kind of we picked a book from them to kind of showcase and bring it to everyone's attention because they really do deserve to be read by everyone. Most of these I hadn't read. I know Amy had read, and there had been a couple times Amy had begged not only all of you out there to read them, but me specifically to read them, and it was. I am so upset that it took me so long to read. But to start off, a good friend of Sideshow, artist Dave Kellett, has been nominated for Best Humor Publication for his book Anatomy of Authors. Chip Zdarsky is nominated for Best Writer after winning Best Single Issue One Shot for Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man number 30 last year. That kid's going places. You'll be hearing the name Chip Zdarsky around.
A constant favorite of the Comics Hall
Yes.
for his writing, for his art, for his very strange Twitter presence. But it's after the many years of campaigning he did for Give Chip an Eisner. Chip is
Yes.
raking in the nominations and the awards slowly but surely.
Yes, and I'm sure this is not his first Eisner ceremony, and it's not going to be his last. I'm fairly confident. I think he's getting this comic book thing down. The best new series category is predominantly books that here on the Comics Hall have been celebrated in features, such as Invisible Kingdom, Once in Future, Something is Killing the Children, and of course, a big favorite of mine, Undiscovered Country. They're all favorites of mine. I think when the comics when it was the Creators for Comics was going on, I almost spent an insane amount of money on some James Tinney and the Fourth stuff for Something's Killing the Children. I remember asking Amy, like, do I pull the trigger on it? Do I do it? I don't know. I almost did, and I got outbid.
But
Luckily.
I love. I mean, it's a little bit of pat ourselves on the back validation that I mean, the books that we're reading, the books that are coming out, those are the ones that are getting recognized for awards. So it makes us
Right.
feel like maybe the things we talk about on this show aren't so silly all the time. But a lot of great talent this year. Voting for the nominees is open currently. It is open
Yes.
to personnel in the comic book industry in reviewing people who are creators themselves. They work for one of the publishers. Unfortunately, Paul and I aren't eligible to vote, but I think we should be. So maybe we'll contact Comicon International. But if you are in the comic book industry and you happen to be watching this little ditty of a show, hopefully
Yeah.
our discussion today will inspire you to vote for some of the books that we love. And you can check out the full list of nominees at Comicon International. The top categories are obviously writer, artist, new series, ongoing series, limited series, but there
Yes.
are international categories, adaptation categories. It's really worth a look to
Right.
see what other kind of comics are out there that you might not be aware of at the moment, and then see which of your favorite books may have scored a nomination.
Yeah, and honestly, something that I've been doing, and I know Amy's probably been doing for years, and if you're a comic book fan, you've probably been doing for years, is use it sort of as like a reading grocery list. Like, I didn't know this existed. I need to pick this up.
Yes.
And that's really, really, I think, one of the best things because I mean, all of these books are so worthy of winning awards and accolades, and most importantly, more importantly, I would say, than awards and accolades, they deserve to be read. So
Yes.
if you can just take a look at that, we'll have Jasmine maybe drop a link somewhere. I think we have the Eisner. You know what? I'll get that link to you, Jasmine. I don't. I just threw this off the top of my head. I'm sorry about that. But you can actually see the full list, and maybe that there's something you can kind of make some notes and pick your next year's worth of reading off of.
Yeah, I like your point to the fact that more so than receiving a really cool globe-shaped award that may or may not be golden for reading or for the comics, the ultimate accolade, the ultimate honor for any book ever, all the time, is to be read, to be loved, to be shared with other people, and that's what we're trying
Right.
to do on this show. Um, Now, another interesting on the flip side of celebrating the best of achievement is unfortunately a lot of things got canceled or dismissed from the comic book universe this week. Um, DC Comics has, in an
Mhm.
unprecedented move, ended its distribution deal with Diamond after 25 years. However, this doesn't affect comic book stores getting the DC Comics to you. They will be going through
Right.
alternate distributors, but if you know something about the comic book industry, Diamond is the sole place that people can distribute their books unless they go through Kickstarters or digital publishing like webcomics. But this is a huge, huge move, and it'll be interesting to see what distributors, kind of in the wake of that, um, will take over and how people will continue to get their comic books. I mean, ultimately, Batman's not going anywhere. It's just a move
Yeah.
on the business side. Speaking
Right.
of DC, we're getting some talk on social that the Joker 80th anniversary was out this week. I think Catwoman also came out recently.
That was
Yes,
last week.
JJ.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Last week was Catwoman. JJ Joe has noted that the Joker 80th is out today. This is
Mhm.
continuing in the long line of DC's awesome 80th celebrations for a lot of their flagship characters.
Right.
They also did Green Lantern recently. I loved the Wonder Woman 80th special. So
Yes.
the Joker, if you're a big fan of that guy, that is out
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of me. I'm a huge DC fan. I love the Joker. I love all of the stories. A lot of the creative team on all of these 80th anniversaries are great. I'll be honest, I've read all of them so far, including the Robin 80th, all of them. Catwoman 80th and Wonder Woman 80th were incredibly strong. They were so fantastic because it allows a lot of these creators and artists who maybe have moved on since being a keystone in this character's, I guess you can say, comic book history. They've gotten to come back and play, and within the realm of that character, and it's really great. I really, really recommend, if I can just take one of them, go read the Catwoman 80th, because it kind of happened in a weird time in our world, and I don't think it got the recognition because it was also when DC was moving to the specifically on Tuesdays and just without Diamond. So it kind of went under the radar there, but it definitely needs to be read.
Yeah, in addition to their ending their distribution deal with Diamond, unfortunately, DC Universe has decided to end its DC Daily Talk Show after nearly 400 episodes,
Oh,
hosted by the incredible, just effervescent, always positive talents of Hector Navarro, Sam Humphries, Clark Wolf, Amy Dallin. They had really cool guests like John Barrowman and Harley Quinn Smith, and they just kind of covered
yeah.
everything in the DC Universe. One of my favorites was their Halloween episode where everybody had some of the coolest costumes, and Sam Humphries went as Larry Trainer, Negative Man. Like it's so
Yes.
so so cool. But what a fantastic talk show! I mean, from one budding comic books talk show to another,
Yeah.
they were very successful. They launched in September 2018. I would highly recommend you support them. Check out their final broadcast on July 3rd.
Right.
And thanks for bringing us DC Daily. DC Daily.
Yes, I can't. I loved it. I mean, the show itself was great. I listened to it mainly as a podcast. So that was and I didn't feel like I missed anything other than like, oh, I wish I could see the excitement on their faces when they're talking about Wonder Woman and Zatanna and all these great characters. But yeah, you will be missed. But I'm sure all of those kids on that show aren't going to stop talking comics.
No, they're not disappearing anytime soon.
No, they're not. Moving on, as of June 2nd, unfortunately, Marvel has closed its digital comic store. You can access any of the purchased comics via the mobile app or Comixology. I hadn't really used Comixology, but I've started using it, and I absolutely love it. You can still redeem digital codes. You just can't purchase new books through Marvel's web store. Anymore. And I know, to me, I didn't have a lot of digital books. I have one digital book on that Marvel app. But I know Amy, you had
Uh,
quite a few,
I think I
right?
had about something over 500 or 600 because I was very religiously uploading my digital redemption codes weekly for a while. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we got some Eisner's chatter while we continue. JJ Joe says that Brubaker and Phillips are his favorite nominees. I think they got nominated for Criminal this year
Criminal. Yeah.
for ongoing series.
Hmm.
And Sean M says the only thing on the Eisner list this year that he has read was Undiscovered Country. But Paul, I'm sure
Oh,
you can do
yeah.
some great talking about that. But
Yeah, I remember this was when we were still in house in the chat cave, and me and Amy did a show, and I just completely ranted about how great Undiscovered Country was. It's fantastic. It's a really really great book, of course, by Scott Snyder. It's got incredible world building. It deserved to be up there, but I'll be honest, I was much more surprised with all of the other noms on that list than Undiscovered Country because some of the stories were I think they needed to be told, and they're widely out there. But yes, Undiscovered Country was fantastic. Great pick.
and Jasmine has dropped the link for the full list of Eisner nominees, so peruse that at your pleasure.
Yes.
Marvel has announced that they will be launching so they give it and they take it away. While their digital comic store may have closed, Marvel has announced they will be launching their Free Comic Book Day titles early. The
Yes.
industry ultimately, after delaying Free Comic Book Day in May, has chosen another date in the fall. But Marvel says, we're going to launch in July. So July 15th, you can, while supplies last at your local store, have access to the Amazing Spider-Man and Venom story, and then the X-Men story that they were going to be launching for Free Comic Book Day.
Right.
That'll be cool. I always
Yeah.
love Free Comic Book Day. Check with your local store, make sure that they are getting them, see what their protocol is about picking up those books, because Free Comics and Free Comic Book Day are very different in this setting. And as an ultimate reminder, the books for Free Comic Book Day are not free to the stores. They do pay a nominal fee, so it always helps to pick up the books and pick up something else and help them out, offset that cost.
Yeah, and here, if whether this is your first episode of the Comics Hall, or if you've been watching us since its inception, we are all about supporting your local comic shop. So please go in. What is it? Be a hero. Put your pull list down to 0,
Yep.
and yeah, go in, like Amy said, go in, pick something up, whether it's like D&D figures or it's anything. But Amy's played D&D at least once in her life. Um, um,
Maybe twice.
Possibly. I don't know. But yeah, pick something up. Free Comic Book Day is going to be awesome, and we will be covering it. I'm assuming once it comes out.
We'll pick up those
Yeah.
Marvel books for sure, and then
Mhm.
we'll see what the rest of the industry decides to do on that note.
Right. Because they will be following suit. Moving right along, Brian Michael Bendis has announced that he's wrapping up his run on Superman after 2 years. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like 2 years. I remember he was just announced, and I was so stoked to see
Yeah,
Brian Michael Bendis on Superman.
the 2 years ago, like the fact that it was 2 years ago that the earth shattered and the internet broke, that Brian Michael Bendis said, okay, after 17 years, I'm done with Marvel. Let's see
Right.
what we can do at DC. And everybody
Mhm.
was like, what? This is unheard of. So I can't believe that he's already told about as much Superman story as he wants to. There's no
Yeah.
specific date for when he's ending, but like the
Yeah.
fact that he's getting ready to hang up the cape is
Yes. Yeah, he announced that actually on the off panel podcast, but like Amy said, he hadn't specified a specific date. He is also he's not done reinventing and creating this character and putting his stamp on Superman, as he's creating a new villain. I think it's Sinmar is the name.
Sinmar.
Sinmar is the name of the new villain he'll be introducing, which is basically the antithesis of Superman and everything he stands for. So that does look like that character will be introduced in Superman number 25.
So if you're a collector, a speculator, or a poll lister, keep an eye out for that issue, because it will probably be a hot commodity. I wonder how it'll stack up to the release of Punchline, because Punchline was DC's biggest gotta have it character.
Right.
So that's awesome. Speaking of gotta have it characters, everybody's favorite baby Landshark from Marvel Comics, featured in Kelly Thompson's West Coast Avengers run, Jeff the Landshark will be getting his own action figure. He is part of Hasbro's latest launch of Marvel Legends. It is a Deadpool-themed line, and so he is accompanying Shikla, who is Deadpool's monster wife. I don't know where they stand. I don't know if they got divorced. I know their wedding was a big deal, but Jeff the baby Landshark, he's not the Build-A-Figure, because she does come with additional pieces of the Build-A-Figure. But Jeff the baby Landshark, who is the best Marvel character to come out in an entire decade. Sorry, Miss Marvel and everybody else. he will be getting an action figure, and I will be pre-ordering. I don't even care about Shikla that much, so I'm gonna have to find someone who really wants her, or maybe wants to build a figure that I can trade with. But I just want that little shark. He's a shark who can walk on land. He's got 4 little paws, and he behaves like a puppy. So if you haven't
He is adorable.
if you haven't met him, check out West Coast Avengers by Kelly Thompson. It's fabulous, and he's a fantastic little
Yes.
character. And then we got one more piece of news. Paul, you wanna?
Yep. So getting ready for Black Hammer to hit the silver screen because we do have because it's confirmed it's just a TV show, right? Or is it a? I'm not sure if it's a film right at the moment. Oh,
They're
they
doing
said it's
a
yeah.
film television shared universe.
Oh, okay. Film, television, shared universe. I was unclear. Dino Nordstrom has signed a new licensing deal that is to help with merchandising and apparel for the acclaimed indie franchise. Last summer, Lemire revealed that Legendary Pictures is working on the shared universe there, which is a Dark Horse comic. So I'm sorry, Black Hammer is a Dark Horse comic series about superheroes who, in the process of saving the universe, get trapped in a strange Twilight Zone-esque town area, and they slowly start to lose who they are and what makes them heroes. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's a book that I know. T- I I would say in the comics industry, it's a big name book because it's Lemire, but it also did kind of fly under the radar because there was a lot of books out there that really were coming out at that time that were incredible.
it did, and I distinctly remember seeing it on the shelf. I did a quick
Right.
flip through, and I was like, I've got a lot of things on my list right now. I don't think I am interested, and I don't know where this one's going. But it has since blossomed into a highly acclaimed superhero universe with a
Right.
lot of interesting potential. So that's really cool. Legendary has also been very, very prudent about snapping up titles. I believe that they
Mhm.
are also the ones that are going to be working with Brian K. Vaughan for a saga adaptation. So
Oof.
it's one of those things we say where if you go to the store and you threw a non-lethal dart at your comic books, you'd be likely to hit something that's already in development for a film. In fact, one of our Eisner nominees that we're covering on the show today
Mhm.
is in development. Again, I think with Legendary. Um,
Oh,
but let's jump in on that without further ado. So this week, taking our cue from the Eisner nominations, we wanted to kind of not necessarily pick the one that we think would win, even though I'm a little biased and I think they will win. But we wanted to pick a book that wasn't a Marvel or DC title because Marvel and DC did get nominated in these
Mhm.
categories, but that people may not understand the premise of or know exactly what it is, or maybe they're not familiar with the names working on the title. We just wanted to kind of introduce you to some fabulous comics
Oh,
that are
yeah.
in the running. Again, um, if you are able to vote in the Eisners, consider checking these out. And they were also, as a bonus, all available for free online for
Right.
reading. 2 Image comic titles, and then Dark Horse did Invisible Kingdom. It was available for free on their website. It is currently discounted on their website. It's no longer
Mhm.
free, but it is available first issue on Comixology Unlimited. So if you have
Right.
that service, um, you are able to check that out. But without further ado, let's start with a little ditty I like to call Bitter Root number
Oh,
one. This was an Image Comics title that I have been begging Paul to read for ages. It is available for free on Image's website, issue number one, and it's a very mature rated comic. Right now, we've got on the screen the Mike Mignola variant cover for issue number one,
right.
which is so. I love how austere and just like family portrait style it is, but it's also got that of course it's Mignola, so it's got that Hellboy style mystique, which I think is a
Right.
perfect play for this type of story because it is a supernatural action light horror story.
Yeah.
So it is nominated for best ongoing series because it
Mhm.
debuted in 2018, and I don't think we clarified, but the Eisner's nominations for the 2020 ceremony are books for their achievement in 2019.
Right.
So Bitterroot was nominated for the continuing story in 2019, even though it debuted in 18, and it was nominated for best new series for the 2018 awards.
Yeah, this book has legs. It's safe to say, and I would say honestly, my biggest regret is not picking this up when we did our first show. I remember I went back and I found it at our first show. Amy recommended this book to me. and I still didn't read it until maybe last week, and I'm so upset.
Oh, well, there's also a new issue out today, which I'm
Oh,
currently debating. They do connecting covers so that if you line them all up, they form one giant picture, but they're doing movie cover variants, and today's is Purple Rain, so I don't
oh,
know. I don't know. I might buy them both. But anyways, without further
so
ado,
cool.
Bitterroot number 1. It is written by David F. Walker and Chuck Brown. Artist is Sanford Green. You might remember Walker and Green from Power Man and Iron Fist, that
Mhm.
really awesome run at Marvel Comics. Colors are done by Rico Renzi, who is also known for his work on Spider-Gwen and Squirrel Girl. Letters by Clayton Cowles, who kind of Clayton Cowles is nominated for best letterer this year. He's kind of in everything, and it's one of those things where I think the mark of a good letterer is you don't notice their work because or you don't because mostly when you notice the lettering, it's
Mhm.
you notice it's hard to read. You notice
Right.
that the panels are difficult to follow and the bubbles are out of order. The mark of a good letterer is the story flows seamlessly and you're able to read all over the place. But Clayton Cowles is in all the major books, Wicked and Divine and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So
I
all
I
star
I
team.
yeah, I mean, it's an incredible team, and I would say, one of the things I think, when you start really, really getting into comics and being more, less about the characters and the creators and such. Well, I mean, it's an amalgamation of everything, but I start when there's a really, really good letterer and everything is moving in such a way. I start like my brain shifts to however it's being read. Like if it's, sometimes it's cursive, or if it's a gothic book or something kind of horror-esque like Bitterroot, you start seeing shades of that. Like even the lettering and everything is scary, scary, or like the font maybe is even weird. I mean, it's an incredible gift that I think I couldn't do, because you have to almost put yourself in the chair of the reader
Hmm.
and guess how him or her will be, interpreting this book, and do that, but for all of them. It's such an underrated part of comics, I think.
Yes. Now I'm gonna put this out to our moderator. Can we pull up the image of Bitterroot that is the teaser image? It's the one that says Spring 2018. It was
Right.
first announced at an Image Comics Expo, I believe, in 2017. There we go. Oh, this was the image that sold me on the book immediately. This is character concept art by Sanford Green.
Mhm.
You can see immediately it is stylish as hell. This is the 1920s Harlem Renaissance. So we got Jazz Age, and we've got
Mhm.
a lot of it's historical America. It's one of those stories where we have two books today that take place in an America that is slightly different than our own.
Right.
Little Bird takes the concept much further, but this is, for all intents and purposes, the Harlem Renaissance that you understand and know, except for the fact that the world is overrun by demons. This is the Sangerier family who is embroiled in a generations long fight against the Jinnu, which are demons that are spawned from human hatred. Um, and because it's the 1920s, I think one of the things I love is the book quickly sets up that the men are expected to be the fighters and the women are expected to mix the bitter roots for the serum, the Fifno serum, which is what they use to expunge the demons from the
Right.
humans.
Almost cure them, right?
But even in the first
Yeah.
issue, we see an amazing sequence of Blink, who is the daughter of the family, just absolutely decimating the Jinnu that Cullen is trying to fight in this panel. This is one of the predominant colors of the first issue.
Right.
Purple and green are the kind of two biggest colors to look for, and especially in scenes where the purple overwhelms, look for the green. The green is indicative of the Fifno serum, which is what the bitter root is in of the title. The bitter root is this mystical herb that the family they grind up, they make a poultice, and they inject into the arms of the Jinnu to cure them. And as you see, when they are cured, these demons are actually humans who have transformed because of their hatred. Their hatred overwhelmed them, and they became
Right.
something monstrous. The bitter root also, like, it's a double entendre title that, as you see more of the series, it's the bitter root of hatred. What is human hatred? And so, of course, it's the 1920s Harlem. There are racial issues, but there's also hatred of family members. Um, Without going too far, you get it more in the later the first arc that grief is a form of hatred in some ways. The anger part of the processing of grief. It's
Right.
a really beautifully layered story with the trappings of this cool kick-ass family fights monsters. Like,
Yeah, and I really love that David F. Walker and Chuck Brown, they don't steer away from throwing you into a world that you're completely unaware of. And one of the things I was fortunate enough to be behind the veil because I'll explain why in a second. Because Amy had so nicely put in the pronunciations of how and some of the of how to pronounce some of these words that maybe either they don't exist or they are just not commonly known. But it is never specifically noted anywhere how to pronounce these. So, Amy, how did you come about knowing how to pronounce some of these incredibly wonderful but also obscure words specifically created for this book?
so as I've said, I was enchanted by that original Image Comics Expo, which I don't know if they're going to do one this year, but if it comes around again, Image Comics Expo is where Image previews all their cool upcoming stuff for the next year. So check it out. I was such a fan of this book, and I've been following it. At Emerald City Comicon 2019, Sanford Green and David Walker were there, and I was purchasing some art from Sanford, including a poster. It was this big, a poster of all the covers put together for the Sangrier family. But being the nerd that I am, I asked David F. Walker, how the heck do you say some of these words? I've never heard them. They're not easily searchable online. And it was really cool. He explained to me that, especially for Sangrier, he didn't have a specific pronunciation in mind. Sangrier was kind of the closest they would get to it. But because these words are either directly taken or mashed together from a number of West African languages, because they wanted the lore of the world. So it's even like
Right.
when you've got what any good fantasy story has their terminology. Like
Hmm.
I,
It
examples are
builds.
failing me,
Yeah.
but like
Right. Like I mean there's a ton of stuff in in like Saga with like I would think it's like oh geez, it's like lolpops. I forget what it is, but it's stuff like that where it builds a lexicon within this
yeah.
title that really forces your brain to shift and live in that world while you're reading it.
Yes, and so specifically, Sangrier was taken from two different Haitian Creole words to form a new family name that kind of means blood warrior. And so that's what these people are. It's a generational struggle. It is an inherited trade of fighting monsters, and that's in their blood, which is
Right.
really cool. The fifth no is just, I don't remember specifically if he had an explanation for that, but that is just the name they decided to call their bitter root of the story. But
Hmm.
interestingly enough, Jinnu comes from the Mandinka language in West Africa, and it specifically means devil or evil person. And so it plays
Mm.
really nicely with the fact that these devils that they encounter are people, and they've been pushed so far by some aspect of hatred or just vile humanity to become the devils that the family has to fight. And
Right.
it's super stylish, and I don't want to call it steampunk because it's not necessarily steampunk, but there is a really cool integration of 1920s aesthetic with what kind of technology would appropriately hunt monsters in that
Right.
era. And I love it.
Yeah.
I just love it so much.
Um,
It's so cool.
and I am watching over. I know Jasmine is moderating everywhere, but I also keep an eye on our Instagram live. Someone did ask, "What's the name that of the comic game he was talking about?" It's called Bitter Root. Uh,
Bitterroot.
Bitter Root. Please go pick it up. It's a fantastic book, and clearly, not only we think so, but everyone thinks so because it is Eisner Award. It is nominated.
Yes, and I do believe we have one more panel to show you guys, or one more set of uh, images. So remember what I said about the colors in this book. Purple is one of the biggest colors in the book, but green is also another color. We see a lot of green in the jazz hall that opens the book, and then we see a lot of green in the concluding section in the forest where the
Right.
cousins, because the family is made up of the matriarch is Ma Etta, and she's this ancient but incredibly intelligent, whip smart woman. There's
Right.
cousins, there's brother and sister, there's aunts and uncles who've gone missing.
Hmm.
And I don't want to spoil it, but the family fractures and comes back together in creative ways throughout the first arc. But this panel, especially, Sanford Green, I will throw money down on anything he does. I actually just picked up the Far Sector variant he did for last week's release from Young Animal. But Sanford Green has this amazingly kinetic and energetic art style that doesn't shy away from drawing the uglier parts of humanity and
Right.
emotion. I mean, watch the emotion on this panel as Cousin Berg, who's the larger gentleman, is trying to placate a couple of police officers who see him and his cousin Cullen with the passed out body of a person that they've just cured from being a Jinnu, but they think they're burying a body.
Right.
And so you see the officer, please don't shoot, you're in danger. And the wild eyes, the spittle flying from the mouth, that is a Sanford Green staple. If you see a person with their mouth open and there's some spit flying, it's probably Sanford Green. And that is one of my favorite things because for me it emphasizes the emotion and the franticness of someone speaking. JJ Joe asks, this begs the question, can one just jump in the middle of this or do we have to hunt for all the issues? Now, there is one collected edition, so you don't have to hunt for every single issue. If you happen to want the connecting cover image, like of all 5 covers put together, you got to hunt them down separately. Yep. But there is one collected edition. And then issues 6, 7, and then today, number 8 are out for Arc 2. So Arc 2 will probably be collected in the fall. And there is one special issue, the Red Summer Special, that kind of gives you more looks around the city of Harlem as it's the sweltering summer. The family is doing what they can. You get a couple of flashbacks with Ma Etta and her children who have gone missing now. So you don't have to hunt for all the issues. I don't recommend trying to jump in the middle because you do miss some like incredible setup and such. But the first issue is available for free on imagecomics.com. So I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. I love a story that can tell me like this is the Harlem Renaissance, and I know what that means. I know that there's art and culture, but also strife in the American setting. Right. But then they're like, but also there's monsters, and also the monsters might be us. And it's interesting to watch. Again, I don't want to spoil it because I read the whole arc, but you see people who transform, who are introduced as humans, who slowly transform into Jinnu. Cullen has a close encounter, and even Berg finds himself changed by the ways that he interacts with the Jinnu. It's such a fantastic story, and actually it surprises me because there's only been 9 issues total in the 2 years that it's been running. But it's something that you want to keep coming back for all the time. And if I'm not mistaken, as I mentioned earlier, Ryan Coogler has signed on to direct an adaptation of Bitterroot, which leads to, looks like we've got a question on Facebook. Paul Dominique Ferdinand said, who would you cast in a Bitterroot movie? Oof. Oh my God.
See, that's tricky. See, I don't think I can really speak to a lot of this because I've only read the first issue so far. I like, because Cullen's he's like the novice cousin, right? He's one that's kind of new to it. I might want to see Lakeith Stanfield. Ooh. But he's a little bit older than I think Cullen is. But I think Lakeith Stanfield has that incredible range to be able to do so.
No spoilers, but the age thing could work. There's
okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. I personally would love to see Tessa Thompson, or even I don't know how frequently she acts, but Janelle Monáe as Cousin Blink. Nice. A fantastic woman who could totally kick the ass of a Jinnu 6 ways from Sunday. I don't know who I would cast as Ma Etta because that role is like oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But I would love to see, you know what? I would love to see Niambi in a movie like this because I know Niambi reads comics and he tweets about them frequently, even from the set of The Good Fight. He would probably make a good Uncle Ford, but I want to see Mike Coulter as Cousin Berg, who's my favorite because each of them has their own idiosyncrasies. But Cousin Berg is overly verbose to the point of being difficult to understand sometimes. He's trying to, in the first sequence, and where we see Cullen fighting the Jinnu in that big purple spread we showed, Berg is trying to counsel him in the ways of properly demon fighting, and he's using words like insulation, insalubrious, and
I
like
definitely looked up a few words. I
pertinent.
was like, I've
Yeah,
never.
he's trying to school his cousin, but he's using too many fancy words. But that's his character. He's the overthinker to a fault, and I love him for it. Um, but
Um,
yes, this whole
cousin, if I can rebuttal, cousin Berg, I would go possibly maybe Winston Duke because of his ties already to Ryan Coogler
oh
from
yeah,
Black Panther. So,
yes,
I mean,
yes,
right? I mean, I'm just, and also seeing Winston Duke in, oh, not Get
us.
Out, an Us, yeah, where he kind of, he kind of played that overly, educated, putting on that front character. I think it would work to that, and I think him working with Ryan Coogler would be incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So that's my personal
Yes.
pick.
This is not
You
the
guys,
Bitter Root Show.
this is not the Bitter Root Show. You guys
Yes.
can make your own choice for Eisner nominee, but I think this series should win Best Continuing. But
Yes.
without further ado, let's go on to Best New Series that debuted in 2019. Another book that I love to death is Invisible Kingdom. This is from Dark Horse Comics, but specifically the Berger Books imprint, led by legendary comics editor Karen Berger, who is responsible for the creation of Vertigo Comics. She has now struck out to do her own imprint with Dark Horse, and they curate, specifically, as she said, the books that she would like to read, but incredibly top-notch creator-owned work. This is
Right.
by a much smaller creative team, G. Willow Wilson and Christian Ward. G. Willow Wilson, you might know from Miss Marvel. She was one of the co-creators with Sana Amanat. She also
Hmm.
just came off of a Wonder Woman run. And then Christian Ward was nominated for an Eisner for his work on Black Bolt with Saladin Ahmed. He also did Odyssey with Matt Fraction, which if you read that series, you're going to find Invisible Kingdom very similar aesthetically, but kind of filling in the lack of Odyssey that we've had since the
Right.
series kind of softly concluded itself.
Softly.
Softly. But this is and I also want to say G. Willow Wilson won a Hugo Award for her science fiction work, and so this is award-winning sci-fi caliber. This
Oh
book
yeah.
is
Oh yeah.
mind blowing. Actually, my background is not from Invisible Kingdom, but it is Christian Ward's artwork for when he does outer space stuff. It's from Odyssey specifically, but just so you guys can see the kind of colors he uses,
Right.
and he does his own colors. I think that's important to note.
And so I think with that, Amy, do you want to maybe, because I think you have more awareness of this title, do you maybe want to get in and tell everyone out there, whether you're watching on Instagram, YouTube, all over the place, the many Facebook channels, Twitch, do you want to tell everyone, Amy, where or maybe what this title is about?
Yes, and I will do my best to keep it brief as I waxed philosophical on Bitterroot. Invisible Kingdom is a really lush space opera. It is both technological sci-fi, but also just the mysticism. The future is dominated by two specific industries. Lux is a mega corporation, think Amazon in space, and the Renunciation is the largest religion in the solar system.
Yes.
That people give up everything to follow the path of. And
Blindly.
so our pretty much, yeah, literally blindly.
And metaphorically.
And we have two main female protagonists. Grix is a jaded freighter pilot whose ship is moments away from falling apart at any given instance. And then Vess is a nun, which is spelled None.
Right.
And she makes the pilgrimage to join the Renunciation in an order specifically called the Sisters of Severity. And the two of them independently on other sides of the galaxy discover that Lux and the Renunciation are working together. And they become hunted for the fact that they know too much about the partnership between the world's largest religion and the world's largest corporation.
Right.
So they then have to kind of escape in this beautiful space setting.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
it's exhilarating.
yeah, I mean, it really, I mean, from the jump, this book is exciting. I think it kind of goes without saying, but I know from our video team over there, they're going to be throwing some panels up. It's beautiful.
Yes,
I
so
mean,
this is a full page, what's called a splash. This is one splash
right.
of Grix's ship, the Sun Dog, trying to navigate through like an asteroid field as they're falling apart.
Right, and I love right before this. Again, we won't we'll try our best not to spoil everything, but it's been around for a little bit. I do absolutely love the banter between the crew because to me, it's like if I can invest in all of the outside characters, it makes it that much easier for me to invest in Grix, who I believe we're first introduced to. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, just seeing her as this, almost like completely just over it space pilot who is it's almost, she's like going through the mundane day to day, and I think that's where the best stories come from, where you are thrust into leadership, you're thrust into this adventure, whether you like it or not, which is what we see. And let me and
On the
this is
on
I
Oh,
was gonna,
sorry. On the flip
yeah,
side of the panel we just saw, I love because these pages come very close to each other in the first issue. This is a more muted, subdued. This is Vess, who has blindfolded herself and is walking the invisible path, or walking the unseen path to the invisible kingdom. The
right.
the kind of monolith thing at the end of her path is the um, kind of the headquarters for the Sisters of Renunciation. But she is walking through a city unaided. We get to see
Hmm.
this beautiful incident where one girl, there's a couple of alien girls who are like, what is that? She's really ugly looking, because she's a different species. But one of the girls says, hey, leave her alone. I recognize what she's doing. She's trying to get to the sisterhood. And they
Hmm.
help her as she's walking blindly through the city. But you see how kind of derelict it is in certain places, as she, a brightly dressed and purple skinned alien, is walking towards this religion that she has literally given up everything to be a part of.
And one thing, I mean, if I can point out on this panel, on the previous panel as well, that Christian Ward does so well and G. Willow Wilson writes so well is scope. To me, it's like the scope of this world, just in that panel alone. I mean, you can see how big the world is on just these splash pages, and that is something to me that Christian Ward has done well constantly. And that, the idea of how big this story is, it really plays into the writing and the art, because it's, you have Lux, which is this huge like mega corporation, and the Renunciation, the largest religion in, the galaxy. It speaks to the scope of this entire story, and it's like this huge big, like I think Amy had put it in our notes, this sci-fi opera that it makes the odds seem overwhelming and daunting with the sheer
Mhm.
scope and the reach of all of both of these organizations. And that is something to me that I love, because I love being able to build a mythos also in my own head and confirm stuff, or shown that I'm wrong. And that's what this story does. And again, I'm speaking specifically from the perspective of reading just the first issue. It sets it up so well. I think of all of these three books, Bitterroot, which we just covered, in Little Bird, which we will cover, this to me sets up the grandest universe, literally and metaphorically. So I mean, this is a book that I think if it didn't even have any, I mean, we would lose G. Willow Wilson, which is a travesty. But I mean, it looks in and of itself so beautiful just to look at.
And it's fun because it does have all the familiar elements of a sci-fi story. I mean, you've got the pilot, you've got the shady organization, you've got the advanced technology, the different alien species, and actually, there's not a single human character in this book. I mean, everything that you look at, all the characters have vibrantly colored
Hmm.
skin, and some of them have tentacles, and some of them, like, none of them are like, oh, there's the Han Solo in the middle of all of this. But on that end, I think Grix is, if you want to put it in simplest terms, Grix is the Han Solo who's helping Vess the Jedi
Right.
overthrow. Like, but it's so much more than that. And I even love the. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good onomatopoeia, like a crack-a-thum and all that stuff. But even the characters' names indicate who they are, because G. Willow Wilson doesn't mess around. Vess is a nice soft name for the mystical side of this universe, and she's a species called the Rulians, and
Hmm.
the Rulians actually have four different sexes, and so that plays a lot into the politics. She's the rarest of them, called a down. There's ups, downs, lefts, and rights,
Right.
which I think is even fascinating as a concept. But she's this rare commodity that gave up her whole life to join a religion that now is hunting her down. And then Grix is this hard, she's got a buzz cut, she takes no nonsense, but she so fiercely loves the family. I mean, there's even a
Right.
child on the ship. I love the and I forget his name right now, but the asthmatic handyman who's always when
Yeah.
there's moments of tension, he always it uses his inhaler, and so you get the sound effect of "Pachoo" as he's
I was
like
like,
he just
finally a character I can relate to in this story. The asthmatic person who doesn't like conflict.
yes, but it's such a beautiful story, and then watching how quickly their worlds collide as they realize that they are in such deep trouble. Now, this book does have two collected editions out.
Mhm.
Each collected edition is 5 issues, and then the final arc, the third and final arc, will release sometime this year. It'll start sometime this year, and I think it'll probably be collected early 2021 based on the
Right.
delays. But I got to the end of issue 10. I think in January, and it said the third and final arc of Invisible Kingdom will come out in June, and I was like, "Yay!" But also, damn it! Like it is so beautiful. It is a world that they can do
Inevitable.
so much with. But I also admire them greatly for saying we're going to tell our story and end it right where we want to.
Right.
Um, it is a visual feast. It is an absolute treat. If you have Comixology Unlimited, you can get the first issue online. Otherwise, if you go to Dark Horse, it is not available for free anymore, but there are a couple preview pages, and it is heavily discounted. I believe last I checked, it was about $1.50 instead of $4.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend it. And then if you can find the trade edition from your local comic book store or an online retailer, there's two full collected volumes available for you. If you love sci-fi, if you love Saga, like and I hate comparing books to Saga because then immediately people go, well, I know what Saga is like. But if you're into that kind of people on the run from two sides,
Right.
beautiful space, tons of weird aliens, there's just so much to be found in this. And Christian Ward's artwork does not disappoint. It's
Oh,
bizarre,
no.
it's fluid. One of my favorite things that I couldn't find a good panel to pull specifically as an example, but one of my favorite things is how many shapes he'll put in to a face or an arm. He's not content just drawing the face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth.
Right.
It's like the face, but he'll highlight the cheek, and there's a line bisecting the forehead, and then the chin is several concentric circles, and then he colors them all in the same way, so it looks like one cohesive face. But there's so many lines, um,
And yeah,
and
and I
that's his
think
style.
it adds to, having obscure lines and obscure faces, it adds to the obscurity and beautifulness of this comic because, like you said, some of those are, there was one where it was in the first panel when they're just getting off the ship and someone is turning and it's almost like this ghost trail off their shoulder that he drew, and it shows movement in such an artistic and obscure way that really I've only ever seen Christian Ward pull off. And I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And like you said, yeah, you can go pick it up on Comixology.
And Christian Ward is
Yeah,
nominated for Best Digital Artist. So again, if you
sure is.
can vote in this year's Eisners, do it. But this Invisible Kingdom has my money for Best New Series. We got a couple comments coming through. Johnny Boy Lee on Instagram is asking if anyone has read Faithless. I believe that is the Boom Studios title by Brian Azzarello. I have not read
Yeah.
Faithless. But I have seen it on the shelves. If you recommend it, please tell me what you like about it, and I will look for it next time I go to the comic book store. And speaking of going to the comic book store, Adam Bunch on Facebook says, finally get to go back inside my shop tomorrow here in the Bay
Hmm.
Area. Can't wait. Hashtag back the comeback, which is the kind of Diamond Comics initiative or the Diamond Distribution initiative to make
Right.
sure that the setback will not be bigger than the comeback. I know a couple stores up in the Bay Area. If you don't mind, shout out your store. I have friends that work in some of those, or I've had friends that worked in some of the stores up there. I don't know if they're still there, but and then Adam Bunch also says Invisible Kingdom sold. So thank you. Please check that
Oh,
out
good.
when you go into the store tomorrow. And that's such a joyous feeling to be able to go back into the stores. I know it's a little different than normal, and sometimes it's weird. I mean, I've been able to go back to my local store wearing a mask, but nothing beats the fact that you can browse the issues on the racks.
On the
So
rack. Yeah.
if you do it safely, but if you get that chance again, it's like, oh, there we go. That's what was
Yeah.
missing.
Some
We do have
normalcy.
one more book to cover in our limited
Yes.
time left. We have the our pick that we were interested in checking out for limited series. This is
Right.
Little Bird #1. Limited series means that the series only ran 5, 6, 2, 3 issues. It was a
Right.
condensed story that is not ongoing.
Yeah, and I mean, Little Bird is a really fascinating book. I ended up doing the most behind the scenes research about how this book came to fruition, and I mean it's absolutely incredible. It's by first time comic book writer Darcy Van Polgeest, artist Ian Bertram, colors by a comic book, famous comic book named Matt Hollingsworth, and letters by Aditya Bidikar. And it's what's great I loved about this particular story is, again, I keep going into it, but the scope and the world that is built into this. Also, this book, being an image book, it doesn't hide and shy away from the violence that is privy to this world, but it is done so in a way where it's not just unnecessary, grotesque violence for grotesque violence sake. I absolutely love it. So it is, Little Bird follows a young Canadian resistance fighter, Little Bird, so it's the titular character, who battles against an oppressive American empire completely taken over by theocracy, and searches for answers to questions, that maybe she was born to ask. Who knows? This was a great story. I think this was one of the stories that I kind of obsessed over the most. I think maybe something happens with my brain when I know that it is a limited story, because I have to like savor each and every panel because it is, running out. So maybe that's where all of, I read and I did, a ton of reading on Bitterroot and Invisible Kingdom, but for some reason I became obsessed with Little Bird. Specifically yesterday, I looked up a ton about it. But Amy, I mean, we haven't had the chance to talk about Little Bird. I mean, I'm assuming you loved it.
I was actually, I think, I mean, love, yes, but it is the one that I have had to turn over in my mind the most. I think because I've been following Invisible Kingdom and Bitterroot, but I literally don't know what happens next. So I think if I knew what happened next, I would be able to form more coherent or intelligent thoughts about Little Bird. I had no expectations going in. First of all, again, this is available for free on Image Comics' website if you want to check it out. It was fascinating. It's one of those books that pulls out and shows you the action and then slowly feeds you details, but it acts as if you're in the world and you already know
Right.
kind of what's like. It like when they're talking about the axe, they're like, oh, we have to free the axe, and you're like, yeah, sure, great, yeah, we got to free the axe.
Yeah,
Who's the
like
axe? I don't.
sword in the stone type, like, all right, just
Yes,
take the axe out.
yes. It was a beautifully done book, and I actually the art, both in coloring by Hollingsworth and then Bertram's line work, it reminded me of the famous French cartoonist Mobius.
Right.
It was just fascinating for me to read. This is on the screen right now. We are looking at a panel from Little Bird. So this is colors by Hollingsworth and art by Bertram. The lightness of the line art, the hatching, the landscapes. There's very few thick lines on this page, and unlike we saw with like Bitterroot, and then I mean Invisible Kingdom, you couldn't even tell where the lines were, but in Bitterroot there was very clear defined lines. This is a very light penciling. I love the way the snow wraps that little building here in this panel, and there's something so airy about the art. It felt like whipped cream instead of ice cream. Like it was something. And I know that's bizarre. I've never
No,
described comics like food before, but or comics like food. But there's something really light about the
right.
pencil work. And now if we have one of the panels from Mobius, I want to it kind of reminded me of this type of landscape.
Right.
And there's another Mobius piece that the colors remind me of, but for me it was the line work, because if you look in the corners of the building and on the dirt here in this panel, you can see that very thin pencil work. I don't know. It was very interesting because I don't think I've read anything by Ian Bertram before.
Yeah.
And I was quite enchanted.
I loved it. It was really nice to see Bertram alongside Hollingsworth, because they both have a very, like you said, whipped cream style, a very airy style. And one thing that Hollingsworth does so very well, because he's worked on books like Batman the White Knight and other really, he's worked all over for any publisher that you can think of. And what he does is he uses colors like any good colorist to set tones, but for me Hollingsworth does it specifically with his sky, and the lighter moments are usually like a light yellow, a light pink, a light blue, and then the heavier you start seeing the dark red, And then you see Cloudy Blues, and that's something that he's been doing for a long time. And that mixed with Bertram's art, who Bertram's also worked on some titles, but I'm just happy to see him finally get his due. He's worked on some books. It seems every book he's worked on has been canceled,
Oh,
but he has done some incredible work. I know him specifically from reading Batman Eternal by DC Comics. If you can tell, because Batman is in the title, but yeah, he did a lot of great line work on that. And just because the book wasn't well received, and all of the reviews and all of the people that I talked about it, they love the art. It's just it is what it is. There's a lot of books, so it was great to see Bertram come out and do some really really great work there. I really loved, to me, again with this book, it had the world building and it had the world building of East of West by Image Comics. It's a Jonathan Hickman book, and also like the socio-political explorations and like what that looks like of Monstrous, which is what my
yes.
brain went to, which is a book that we covered a couple weeks ago on the Comics Hall. And I went back and I read, I think, the next 4 issues. I don't even know if I mentioned it to you, Amy, but I think I'm done with the first arc through Monstrous.
Oh,
um
wow.
yeah, I've gotten as far as I think I can. And that book is incredible, and it deals, like, again, with the socio-political climate in this book. And I think that this book does it really, really well in a way that the Monstrous did. Saga, again, we bring Saga up again, but that's because it's a really good book.
Yeah, and
Um,
actually, I wanted to note because I don't want to compare everything in this show to Saga, but what reminded me of Saga in this is the narration we get from Little Bird, where she says, "This is the story about me. This is the story of how I lived, how I died, all the people who ever hated me." And it reminds me of when Hazel in Saga is saying, like, "This is a story of how I'm growing up and my parents are gonna die," and so when they get to those moments where I'm like, "Oh shoot!" Like, this thing that she totally told me this is part of the story just happened. Like, what the heck is going to happen next? But knowing that this is a limited series, I'm going to definitely have to find it. I know that at the end of the first issue on Image Comics, they preserve the page that says we're not collecting this book in trade, but I believe it has since been made a hardcover. I hope it has because I don't have the issues. Um, uh, but yeah, I was fascinated, and there is another panel I wanted, or another set of another panel I wanted to pull up of. I love when things break the panel borders, and so we had a lot of scenes of violence, as you mentioned, the darker reds coming out for Hollingsworth. Um, there's a lot of gross, almost tentacular, if that's even a real word, movement in this book. And so there's a scene where the axe, who is a person but is also an axe. I think the axe is a symbolic. It'd be like if Captain America was the shield.
right,
But
right.
Little Bird and the axe are fighting the guards, and there's viscera all over. And I love the fact that the panel lines are still intact, because some artists will like physically break a panel when action is happening, like, oh, a sword just sliced through the panel. The
Right.
panels themselves are whole and complete, but the viscera is coming out. And I love that tiny inset at the bottom of just the eyeball.
The
Uh,
eyeball. Oh, yes.
it's so gross, and it really it's really frantic. Seeing things bursting out of the panel are so it's kinetic, it's energetic, it's frantic, it's disgusting. And I love then how that red permeates through the rest of the panels through the end of the book, because they are now blood soaked. Little Bird's furs are soaked. The axe is covered. But this tentacle motif is quite strange. And so I thought this was fascinating. And it's actually an even bigger panel, but I cropped out some swear words. Sorry, guys. But I love when artists do that, especially the panel that bends and bows to Little Bird stabbing one of the guards. I love when they play with panel um,
Right.
shape for the action. I think that's one of the best ways that an artist can tell story without drawing the characters. It's in the panel shapes.
Right.
Um,
I mean,
yeah, this
I
book was fascinating.
yeah, I mean, this book was fascinating. All of the books that we covered, being Bitterroot, Invisible Kingdom, and Little Bird. We had a question over, I believe, on YouTube from JJ Joe asking what were our favorite nominees. I think these were them, the three of them. I mean, there's so many categories. It's really hard to just pick one particular one, but I think we kind of picked the ones that we were most excited to either go back and read in Amy's case, or read for
Mhm.
the first time in my case. Um, I mean, it was an incredible, incredible year for comics again. And the good news is we've got, a whole new year for comics, and we've got all, like I said earlier, the grocery list of books that you can kind of check out there.
Yeah, definitely Bitterroot and Invisible Kingdom. I lobbied hard for those. But any of the ones that we mentioned from the new series list is Something is Killing the Children. I finally got through the entire first trade
Right.
for that, and it is fabulous. Um,
I
yeah,
went ahead and read the first 2 issues of Ghost Tree. Ghost Tree is fantastic. Oh, so good.
yeah.
On from the
Limited
one of the
limited
limited.
series is the category I want to explore more of because I actually don't believe I read any of those books.
Oh, okay.
Surprise, surprise. Um, and a couple other things. I want Christian Ward to win best digital artist because there's pencils, inks, there's digital art. I know Jen Bartel got nominated for covers. The whole covers category though is like stacked. It's Christian Ward, Julian Totino Tedesco,
Oh
Emma
my lord.
Rios, David Mack, Francesco Francavilla, and Jen Bartel. So that one's going to be a
Yeah.
bloodbath.
If
And then
from a sideshow perspective I can be weighted, I'm pulling for Tedesco. He's done some great work, some great
yeah,
APs for sideshow already, and he's
I
fantastic.
I feel like if Christian Ward can take the digital arts, we should have a how people do their Oscar bets when they figure out how they're going to announce the winners. Maybe the Comics Hall will have an official Eisner's Oscar party. And I
Right.
really want Mariko Tamaki to win for Best Writer. She's nominated for Harley Quinn Breaking Glass. She
Right.
did my favorite run on She-Hulk, which was actually just titled Hulk when
Mhm.
Jennifer Walters turned gray and dealt with her trauma. Um,
And I believe she has a Wonder Woman run coming up. She should be taking
yes,
over Wonder Woman pretty
yes,
soon,
she
so
does.
that'll be exciting.
Yes, but we could go through the Eisner list for hours. But we should definitely consider doing at least a poll or something on our social media of picking the winners, see who gets the most correct. And if anyone missed and was wondering where our Doom Patrol show went, we had to take a break last week, but we are doing and rescheduling our Doom Patrol show for slightly later this month. We're going to need to get
Yes.
an exact date. We'll put it on our social, but we want to time it with the release of Doom Patrol Season 2 on HBO Max and DC
Yes.
Universe. So don't fret. We've got Doom Patrol coming up. We've got all that Grant Morrison, Bizarro, Scissorman goodness.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and so we will be back with Doom Patrol. If not next week, then the following week. We got to check when the show comes out, but
Right.
we appreciate you guys bearing with us on that and for showing up for this show because this was really exciting. And who knows if the winners turn out to be totally different, but they shouldn't. We'll do another Eisner winners show and see which books took the nominations.
Right. Yes. But
But
thank you
that's
guys
all
all.
in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. In the not so distant future within the next coming weeks. So we'll see you. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out. I know that this was a longer show, so thank you guys all for hanging out with us and putting up with me. Of course, Amy is as always being the words of wisdom there, and I've got a cool background. So
Thanks for chatting with Jasmine in the comments as well. If you've got any more questions or want to talk Eisners, hit us up on our socials. We're at the Comics Hall on all
everywhere.
channels: Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitter, and I'm just oh my goodness, I'm just so excited about all of this.
There's
Yeah,
Go
thank you
read.
guys. Yeah, now you go read. If you can get back to your store, go do it. Be safe, have fun. If not, check out the issues available online on Image Comics website. Make your own bets for who's going to win the Eisners. And we'll see you
Right.
guys next week. Once again, I'm Amy,
I'm Paul.
and this has been the Comics Hall.
Boom, 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 boom.